Attention property owners. If you're one of those greedy, rotten, no good capitalists, and you want to buy a property, fix it up, and rent it out at a profit, I have something you should worry about. Probably the number one thing of the next decade, and that is regulation. As the world falls apart, politicians who caused the chaos will continue to implement more centralized control in the form of rent control. Now, I want to follow a timeline here, right? Over the last 2 years, we had eviction moratorium. Maybe a landlord could say, "Hey, what gives? How am I going to pay my mortgage company?" Shut up, okay? So we had the eviction moratorium. We had a drop in interest rates, almost to zero, so you could finance a home at 2.5, 2.25%. That didn't drive up costs at all, right? We pumped the economy full of money. Now we have inflation. We have raised interest rates, and now we have a problem with real estate. People can't afford to rent. So all those problems caused by central planners, caused by the government. So the natural reaction is to have rent control. So I want to show you the guys this story here from Politico. And this is happening all over the country because people are calling for, hey, help me, government, I'm being evicted. And they will acquiesce. Okay, so it says White House prepares new tenant protections, alarming housing issue. Tenant protections is a synonym for rent control, just so you know. If it's impossible to evict people or uh, nearly impossible, um, what do you think landlords are going to do in that area? They're going to leave. Okay, the White House is preparing to roll out new measures as soon as this month. Executive order, by the way, to protect tenants in the wake of a post pandemic price spike. How did that happen? Okay. According to the housing advocates and industry lobbyists who have met with administration officials, the industry is bracing for some pretty intense regulation, says Jerry Howard, CEO of National Association of Home Builders, whose members include landlords. They need to be very cautious about what they're doing, says Howard, who was one of the handful of industry representatives at the November White House meeting on tenant protections. There's a real chance of creating a problem that doesn't exist. Now, what else did Jerry, the CEO of National Association of Home Builders, what do you know? Huh? Probably know nothing about free market competition. You need to listen to the politicians because they understand best. Of course, you have the typical Elizabeth Warren leaning on administration to go big on curbing rents, increasing of millions of units. So price goes up. Government's fault, by the way. Um, how do we keep the price down? We'll do it artificially. And no real economist will tell you that this is a good idea. Price controls are a horrible idea, horrifically bad. But what if we do price controls, but we call it protections? Is it as bad? It's so dumb. Okay. So, Democrat politicians say we want to push the president as far as possible to lighten the burden of rent on everyday people. Why don't you just pay for it out of the government coffers? We're trying to lighten the load. Um, so stupid. Okay. Democrats want the administration to enact new restrictions on rent hikes, and punish landlords they accuse of price gouging. Not just principles, but just guidelines. But what can we but what can the president do through executive actions to lighten the burden on people and put more money in their pockets? Democratic politician said. Hey, okay. Um, as I've said before, the economy is like an ecosystem. And a lot of these ecosystems, we say, hey, okay, we'll take out a predator of this ecosystem, or we'll take out an insect or what have you. The whole ecosystem can collapse because it's very complicated. And politicians don't look at the economy that way, unfortunately. Further reading here, a lot of rental supply is going to be completed in 2023. We're going to see more completions than we have in the last 40 plus years, says Jay Parsons, chief economist at RealPage, a property management software provider. So he's saying there's more supply coming online. What would discourage more supply coming online? You can't make a profit. Does this stuff frustrate you guys like it frustrates me? It's just excruciating. Now, I want to show you another story, and they kind of lead the charge. LA leads the charge on this. And typically, if you see something in the LA Times, you're going to see it in Washington. Like if you see California doing something, you're going to see that same policy in Washington in a couple months. Okay, so the city council in LA voted for uh, more tenant protections. Now, as we all know, LA is a beacon on a hill. It's probably one of the best cities ever, and they run things super well there. But reading from the article here, with pressure mounting and the clock ticking, the Los Angeles City Council voted unanimously Friday to dramatically expand protections for renters, heading off what advocates have feared could become a wave of evictions. This is because the pandemic moratorium is now lifting, and all these people are like, okay, now I'm going to get kicked out of my apartment, or they're raising the rent on me. Who should I call? Oh yeah, the LA City Council. Okay. The vote comes just 11 days before the city's longstanding C-19 anti-eviction rules were set to expire. The new policy is expected to go into effect on the January 31st deadline. Now, what does the policy do? This is good. Okay. New policy will establish a minimum threshold for eviction for tenants who fall behind on rent. Now, um, I get it. I get to a certain degree. You don't want people being dragged out by their ear in their apartment. But what I don't get is you have a you have a landlord. You come into an agreement. You must pay this amount per month. Now, previously to the psychotic area we're in today, you can evict people after they stop paying. Maybe you had a month or 2 months to get out. And now this is going to drag on for years. Meanwhile, the landlord is not being paid at all. So how does the landlord pay uh, the mortgage company? They don't care, is the answer. Okay. But the landlords now have to it requires landlords to pay relocation fees in some situations in which large rent increases would result in tenants' displacement. So now you need to think, if you're a business owner, if you're a landlord, if you raise the rent, you're going to do a cost benefit analysis because now you have to pay for these people to move. What? it's it's insane, folks. Okay, landlords will no longer be allowed to evict tenants in any rental property, including single-family homes, unless there is unpaid rent, documented lease violations, owner move-ins, or other specific reason. That provision will go into effect after 6 months or when the lease expires, whichever comes first. So how long do they have before they can kick these people out with unpaid rent? 6 months plus the litigation and all the other BS they have to deal with. The new policy will also block, this is my favorite, evictions until February 24 for tenants who have unauthorized pets or have added uh, residents who aren't listed on the leases and create a new timeline for paying rent owed for the emergency period. So if you're in LA and you have a Komodo dragon, you better write that down, on the lease. Hey, you're not allowed to have Komodo dragons, uh, a boa constrictor, or any kind of other pet. And you go and check on the property because the sink is leaking one day, and you see it, and you're like, "Hey, you're not allowed to have that." You got to wait 6 months and then go through all the litigation to kick them out. Absolute BS. But like I said at the beginning, I think this is going to be one of the lead. Like if you are an Airbnb investor or you are a long-term rental investor in the landlord space, this is going to be the leading cause of where you pick geography, and therefore you're going to have places like LA who are continually going downhill. You can see the writing on the wall. If um, tenants are protected to the point where landlords don't get paid, who's going to invest in that area? We'll worry about that later, I guess. But like I said, the Biden administration is trying to do this across the whole country through executive order. You're welcome. Okay. All right. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. See you on the next one. Peace.